And we are live. Welcome everyone to Wildin Out. I am Lotus Knight, your stream operator for tonight, and I'm here to introduce the brand new show. Please welcome our hosts for tonight, Marty B. Okay, I think everyone can hear now. Audio problems have been solved. Probably want to redo the intro. So, Marty, take it on.
Oh man. Well, let me keep it simple then. We went off the air for a little while as team or Heart Center. Everyone on the Heart Center team took over all the constructed series, and we figured they were having a bit much. And now with the EU series coming back, we figured we just have our own wild show. And so joining me is Rodit and Seth. How you guys doing? Rodit?
Seth, I think we're doing great. I can't remember exactly what I said before, but just really happy to be here and looking forward to a nice conversation about Wild.
I'm gonna go ahead and agree with Rotted already right off the start of the show. I'm very
Yes.
glad we brought this back. I have always wanted Wild to take a little bit more of a front seat, so I'm excited for the opportunity to be on the return episode.
All right. Well, we have a lot to unpack. So let's start off with players of the week. We have one player of the week for each series, one in the NA server, one in the EU server, and we'll start with the NA server. Seth, do you want to tell us?
Yeah, so everybody knows and loves Dr. BOMD, so he's wrote us a nice little write up. So Doc had to say about this player: a player making a positive mark already, predictably matching against prominent meta archetypes, performed mightily against pressure, mustering answers proficiently, my awarded player of the week, Mr. Quakelord, anti-swept priest, mage, and paladin, making a positive margin of possibility, masterfully accomplished pain merchants, a Dr. BOMD prescribed meme. Now, for anybody who's curious and isn't keeping up with Wild, the person who got anti-swept was me.
Well done, Seth. Glad to make you live through the pain once more. Now, we also have an EU player of the week to tell you guys about, and this comes from me too. It was down to the wire in the match between F12 Celadon and the team from across the pond, where Bobson, also known as Mr. F12 himself, was up for closing it out, but a certain happy goal got in the way of that. The Rotted Zombie took a 3-2 win in a close series to eke out a win for USA #1, bringing them their first victory in the inaugural week of the EU Wild Series. Congrats, Rotted. And no,
Thank
he
you.
actually didn't know this.
And I don't want to brag too much. You know, I am an American. I go to Europe and I show you how it's done.
Like a true American.
Like a true American, I tell someone else how to live their lives. No, it's a lot of fun. It's the debut season of the THL's Wild Series in Europe, and already it's off to a really competitive start. Rebob and I had a great match, and a bunch of other great matches were had, and I think this is the beginning of a really great series.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of series and all these matches, we have a lot of decks and a meta to discuss. How about we move over to that?
Because there is a lot to discuss. Absolutely.
For sure. So, taking a look here, we have a lot going on. Okay, so I'm not going to focus on all the decks because there's way too many to count, really. But the main brings were within Warlock, Warrior, Paladin, and Mage to a lesser extent. So Warlock, we all know Seed Warlock was dominant pre nerfs. Okay, 58 brings there. 21 Dark Lair Warlocks as well. So not all Seed Locks. We also had a Cube Lock and 2 Reno Locks there. Warrior, sorry, it was mostly Quest Pirate Warrior. We also had some normal Pirate Warriors. I was one of them actually, and a bunch of other archetypes within the Warrior class, including a few odd Pirate Warriors. Mage also saw the usual variety, but primarily it was Mozaki Mage. This was a meta very highly favored for Mozaki Mage, given its matchup into Warlocks, because Ice Block just kind of beats them as long as they don't run Curse of Reform. And we actually didn't see much Curse of Reform this last week. And so it was very popular. Otherwise, it didn't really seem like anyone knew what to bring because there were so many different archetypes that could work out. The strategy really, from ladder, we saw that Seed Warlock was super strong. And it was either you tried to deal with Seed Warlock somehow, or you banned it and you brought 3 other decks. And you didn't know whether those 3 decks should be something slower or something faster. So that's how we get such a high variety. One of the things I do want to mention, though, Seed Warlock, we know how bad it was on ladder. And it turns out it was just as bad, if not worse, in Conquest in terms of its dominance, where it was banned 60% of the time it was brought. Just under 40% of the time overall, it ate a ban. Okay, 40% of decks were Seed Warlock. Even when it was banned too, the lineups that it was brought in, okay, or sorry, when it wasn't banned, the lineups it was brought in went positive. Okay, they had about a 53% win rate, which means people who were leaving it up and trying to counter it weren't able to successfully counter it. And that's huge. How do you guys feel about this?
Well, I mean, I think this tells the story of the early going format for United and Stormwind, and I know that there are a lot of wild players, both in chat and out there, who are very eager to see something done about the Demon Seed, and we had hoped that adjustments to Dark Glare and to Flesh Giant and to a bunch of other stuff would improve the wild meta, but these numbers are very lopsided. What do you think, Seth?
They finally did what we'd asked for a year. They took care of normal Dark Glare. That deck is out the window. Because why would you ever play that deck when you can play the same deck with a 1-mana card that instantly wins a slower matchup? It's effectively killed anything slower than it, just like Steeler did, and they were pretty quick to get on top of Steeler, so I'm hoping there might be something done about Demon Seed before too long.
Given how
There were-
it's... Go ahead. You go first. I'm formulating my question.
Oh, I was going to mention before
Yeah.
we even get to Seed Lock, there were other nerfs as well. Okay, we saw Mage get hit. So one of the counters in Mozaki Mage took a significant hit with the 3-mana Incanter Slow now. And Odd Paladin lost Conviction. Hand Buff and and Aggro Paladin, both also fairly popular decks within the Paladin class, now are suffering from a much more expensive Conviction as well. It's basically twice the cost.
I think
How does
that's
this
significant.
affect
Yeah.
where we go? Like, how does this affect where we go within Conquest? Are we still bringing these decks? Is Seed Lock still going to be a problem in Conquest? Is it going to be an even bigger problem? Where do we go from here in Conquest?
I think you can go one of two ways, and I think you already alluded to it. You're either going to be banning Seed Warlock, or you're going to be trying somehow to play through it. And I don't think, given the stats that we've seen, I don't think the latter strategy is really that viable. So I think what you're going to be seeing is a lot of people just throwing up their hands and saying, okay, this is what it is. We're going to ban this. And that opens up the door to a lot of other potential archetypes and matchups. But that being said, you're absolutely right about Paladin. I think we're going to need to see a few more weeks of stats to see just how much specifically hand buffs fallen off, because I would have to believe that Odd Paladin's really going to fall off. The burst from Conviction was super significant in that archetype.
All I have to say is rest in peace is Odd Paladin. Oh my goodness, that was I know it was a standard nerf, but they effectively killed one of the best Paladin decks. Well, really every Paladin deck, because it all centered on that burst. Hand buff relied on it. Odd Paladin relied on it. Even Tax Paladin sometimes threw it in just for some extra damage in the end game, but
Right.
they've effectively neutered Paladin.
Given what they've laid out as sort of the timeline for games with the Demon Seed, I don't want to say I'm surprised, because obviously they're adjusting for standard, but I am a little surprised given that they've set such a fast clock on games, and they've taken away Paladin's ability to generally be on that timetable. Otherwise, it's just way too fair, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. It's just too fair, which is really unusual to say, since Odd Paladin has been a mainstay in Wild for who knows how long, especially with all the support it's gotten in recent expansions. It's just gotten better and better, and now people are questioning whether they should still be bringing it to these conquest matches, really.
Yeah, I brought it in Europe, but it felt a little sketchy, and that was only because, not the sketchiness, but the bringing was only contingent on being able to rely on something like Conviction. Without it, I just couldn't see bringing it over something like Hand Buff, or perhaps just a different aggressive archetype, period.
I brought
Yeah.
Hand Buff on North America, and Conviction at 2, that's a whole, you're paying a whole nother mana, and when you're on turn 5 and you need to dump out 2 bluegills and a Conviction to kill, you give your opponent a whole nother turn to stabilize, to clear your board, to prepare for what you're going to do, and that puts you in such a worse position. One turn makes a lot of a difference in Wild.
Exactly. And thinking about the spread there, it's 2 more mana if you want to play both Convictions, and it takes away just that much more damage. I just don't know if it's viable anymore.
Yeah, you have to wonder. So, with that said, what are your guys' decks to beat really in the conquest meta right now? If there's any decks to beat or look out for.
Ban
After you,
Seeds.
Seth.
Ban Seeds. You can try and counter it, and you might have some sort of success, but just ban it and play decks that are enjoyable to play against.
Yep, that's exactly it. You eat it, you eat it the given, banning Seeds, and then you just open up, and if you want to target aggro, great. If you want to be aggro, great. Just you have to get rid of Demon Seed Warlock, and then the world is basically available to you again.
Yeah, it really feels like the meta has come down to that once more. And even with nerfs, it doesn't feel like we're shifting too much away from that. But we'll have to see if any new developments within the conquest meta come along. Are we ready for match recaps then? How about Brown Conference? We can start with NA first.
Let's get them. Oh, buddy. You love to see
I just
it.
have to giggle to myself a little bit every time I see Everyone's a Winner's logo.
It's all good. Yeah, so looking at the Brown Conference, we have Everyone's a Winner on the top, followed by Mancrick's Revenge. Now, if you are the top 2 points per week earners in your conference, you get your logos at the top. So play well, win some weeks, and you too can have your logo up there. But first up, we have Everyone's a Winner versus Bash Bros. Seth, you want to tell us about this matchup?
Sure. So Everyone's a Winner, coming back, same lineup. I mean, you know the drill. It's Everyone's a Winner. Now, I do want to point out in the 2 seed, Jordan MG coming in, I believe his first THL experience.
Yes.
Yes, coming
He actually
in. Go ahead.
Yeah, he wasted 5,000 dust to craft the decks because he was an emergency sub.
Well, it looks like it paid off for him because he took a pretty big win in the 2 seed. A 3-1 is nothing to scoff at. That is very impressive, impressive. And you go down the list, no surprises there. Sunday lost 2-3. He's on some copium, but that's just how it goes. 6J
It's hard. It's hard
back
out
on
there
top
for
of the
Sunday.
sweep.
It's okay. It's just Sunday.
It's just
Okay.
Sunday things.
If anyone asks, he's just going to blame his own smooth brain. It's okay. He understands.
I can relate to that one.
But yeah, this was a very dominant win. And I think the bans kind of speak to the meta as well.
That's what I wanted to speak about. Yeah.
9 out of 10. 9 out of 10 bans were Warlock. Goes to show where the meta was last week. Really, Warlock just utterly dominant. You had to get rid of it. You have to wonder what Reverb's strategy was as well when he banned the Warrior. Maybe he thought he could take the Warlock on. Maybe he thought the Warrior was just the problem, and he could take the Warlock on the chin or Warlock on the chin. Who knows?
I'm looking at his deck list. It looks like he tried to target Warlock. He brought Odd Rogue, of course, Seeds. No, I'm sorry. He brought regular Dark Glare. So Dark Glare was generally considered at least a turn or two faster than Seeds. So that seems to be the reasoning there. And then Tax Paladin and Pirate Warrior, no quest. So it does seem like he tried to counter Seeds, and it's very obvious how that went for him.
Yeah, as we were discussing earlier, it just didn't seem like you could target Warlock last week. And Reverb was one of the pieces of collateral from that.
And I mean, what's the definition of target in a conquest format typically, right? You want to guarantee like a very, very, very solid matchup. But unless you're talking about the mirror, Seeds Warlock is going to be pretty well favored in the hands of a decent player into anything, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a huge issue. So Reverb probably wishing he went another direction this last week. Maybe he'll go a different direction this time. I'll have to see. But I do expect Bass Bros to turn it around at some point. No way they're going to stay down at 7 points in the Bound Conference. Next up, Rada, do you want to take this one?
I would be happy to. All right. Let me bring it up here. Aha. Oh, Lotus?
Should be
I've got it on the sheet. Yeah.
Perfect.
Now take a look at this. Chat. We have the Aussie Pain Merchants, a new team for THL against Nofin 2, Underwater Boogaloo. Now this is about as close as you can get. You had Aussie Pain Merchants emerging 13-12, but you had quite the interesting matchup spread. 3-2 on the matchups. One sweep going in favor of Rice Bowl. Tiger Eye looks like he did well. Then it sort of ended up snaking back in the other directions for the 13 points. Now, unlike the prior matchup, the bans were a little bit more all over the place in this one. Whereas Nofin, 3 out of 5 of them banned Warlock. Only one of the Aussie Pain Merchants, Quakelord in the 1 seed, chose to ban Warlock. What are your guys' thoughts on that? That is genuinely surprising to me, given how a bunch of the other series shaped up to me.
I think this was the only matchup where not banning Warlock worked out more than it didn't.
And fair point. Slight says in chat that Maxi couldn't ban Warlock. That's a fair point. Because Rice Bowl, in fact, did not bring Warlock. Rice Bowl.
Yeah, and yeah, Otters bring up a good point. Still should have banned it. Probably.
Rookie mistake.
That Warlock can be sneaky. So
I guess it worked out for Rice Bowl. He won 3-0, but Rice Bowl is an exceptional player. I mean, as is Maxi, but if anyone's going to sneak through without a Seeds Warlock or a Dark Glare, for that matter, I guess Rice Bowl, but still a little surprising to
Yeah.
see someone not bring some form of Warlock in week 1.
Rice Bowl nerfing himself by not bringing Warlock, giving Maxi the opportunity to ban any deck he wants.
And then still sweeping.
Regardless, still
You
the
guys-
fairly
you-
typical spread here in terms of the decks you see brought. A lot of Warlock, a lot of Warrior, and then a smattering of more Paladin than not. Only one Druid, only one Hunter. A decent amount of Priest and Mage. That's your meta. Yo Daddy brought a Shaman, as did Glare.
Yeah, some interesting choices there. I believe those were Overload Shamans as well. So those
right.
were centered on the Spirited Frogs. Yes.
And that's always an interesting thing about
Double.
when week 1 is right after an X pack. You're going to get people experimenting, especially since lists aren't going to be perhaps hyper optimized. So you're going to see a lot of fun stuff. And in this case, we got some of it.
In case anybody's curious, yes, I did get reverse swept, and yes, it was Pocket Galaxy.
Good job, Seth. We're proud.
How do you
I'm
feel?
on a little bit of copium.
How do you
and
feel
then
about that, buddy?
It's okay.
I shared the replays, and I threw multiple times, but that's okay.
It
Because
is okay.
Hearthstone's a game of skill and luck. So sometimes when you're like me, you get really lucky, and then you win anyway. It just didn't work out that way this week. So we'll be back next week to roll the dice again.
Hey, Lotus, do you have just a still image of Marty's headshot there for Seth?
It's all good. It's all good. Well, I'll DM it to him later.
Yeah, there it is. There's Seth's copium. No, but I mean, like, you were very brave to bring a lot of different stuff, and it almost worked out for you. And you're an exceptional player. You'll bounce back.
If you'll look, I obviously didn't have the goal to try and target Warlocks, so I thought, surely there's no way he brings an all-combo lineup. So I banned his Warlock and went hard. I'm bringing my slow decks from yesteryear.
Oh, Seth, you officially have had your logo changed.
Thank you. That is very appropriate.
Amazing. Well, moving on, let's go to the Green Conference. And I can take this next one for us.
Let's do it.
And we have my team Avatul Viridian versus the usual suspects. How fitting. I am the one being carried this last week.
We did it.
Relatable.
So Meowth also went the target Warlock strat, which is why he banned Warrior. It worked out for him. Went 3-1. Corb went a similar route with his lineup. Paladin figured it was just best for him to not deal with Peanuts' odd Paladin at the time. And it was very close, as we see. 3-2 going his way. Snakefods and I had a back and forth. Snakefods was put in a really big predicament where he kind of had to leave Seed Warlock up because my priest countered all of his decks. So he couldn't leave my priest up. The Warlock got through, but unfortunately I couldn't get the rogue through, so I fell there. Neji and Rotted both got the sweeps and were able to clean up early in the week so that Corb and I could relax a bit, go for points, and not steal any wins since the week was already set.
We got you, boss. Don't worry.
By the way, we didn't mention the conference stats up top. There was a little bit of wonkiness with the website. So the golden hand is all the way on the left for some reason, and the super long name, we're not going to say their acronym on here. We'll just call them OWL. But that is Overpowered Wild Leaderboard. Casters underestimate me. Let's call them OWL from now on. But
It's a hell of an
notice
acronym.
Hair Club is at the top, but yeah, Hair Club is at the top, but we don't have their logo up here. That's because their points per week was lower. So they actually won a game this week against the whole Golden Hand already, and that catapulted them to first place. But last week they weren't there, so we have F12 on the left, and Mad Scientists on the right. With that said, we should move on to the next match. Rod, do you want to get this?
Sure. Send me, boss.
We were actually just talking about Owl, and we're featuring their matchup now.
Yeah, right. So we have the Meta Droolers against Owl, just Owl, nothing else. And it was a fairly straightforward 16-10 win for the Meta Droolers, starting their season 1-0, Owl down to 0-1. No way in the 1 seed, lost, starting off 2-3, but then his friends in the lower seeds picked him up. Lasagna emerged with a win 3-0. Godbout lost 2-3, but then Nops and QWERTY both won 3-1, sending it, like I say, to the 16-10 win. In terms of the archetypes, you see a lot of the Warlock, a lot of Warrior. Stuff's fairly well all over the place, though, as people look to experiment. More Druid than we'd seen in the other matchups, and more Hunter, actually, as well. One copy of Demon Hunter for the nice Jewish owl on the right-hand side. But otherwise, it looks like a lot of people were really just trying to feel it out and start to get a sense of the meta, but Warlock's still the story.
Yeah, I want to mention that is a very unique Demon Hunter. That's Otters' Quest Tax Demon Hunter from the first day of expansion. So
By
it was
the power
not
of God.
your usual. Yeah, it was not your usual odd Demon Hunter. We didn't have any combo Demon Hunters this last week.
I had
No
completely missed that.
Highlander
Thank
Arena
you.
Demon Hunter. Yeah,
My
it was
God.
Tax, and as Owl said, it got a win. So congrats to him for bringing something off meta and getting a win. Also, shout out Otters for the deck list.
And I could see where that would
As-
work if you're trying to punish some of the stuff at the top of the meta, and you can get a decent draw with it. I could see how it would work quite well.
Absolutely. So the only thing I want to mention is the Warlock bans and who was winning. Lasagna won without banning Warlock, but that's because he didn't have a
Correct.
Warlock to ban. So I'm not going to look at that. We're just going to pretend that's bad data. But otherwise, everyone who won here, if they could, they banned Warlock.
Yeah.
It's a sign, guys. Ban Warlock.
I mean, why would you not at this point? I mean, targeting it is so sketchy.
Yeah, well, we don't know now because of update or nerfs and balance changes. So some people may have different strategies, and we may find that things can change in the coming weeks as the meta develops. But
Right.
prior to balance changes, you absolutely had to ban Warlock.
Yeah, I guess we'll need the data coming through from this week to really further get a sense of how things are developing post nerf. But I would not be surprised if it's even more lopsided this week as people sort of like lean into the demon seed. But that's why they play the games.
Yeah. So with that wraps up the Green Conference for us. And now we can move to EU. Seth, do you want to run us through the standings for EU?
Sure. Let me get it pulled up here. All right, so in EU, we've got bad tech cards on top. Oh, and I do want to mention, this does look very close. It didn't seem like there were any blowouts this week. In North America, there were definitely some pretty big gaps, but 19-12 means it was pretty competitive in EU, which is to be expected with some of the players in there. So we've got bad tech cards on top with 19 points, Safari Wild in second with 17, USA number one with 16. Shout out. A Little Agony is tied with EU Everyone's a Winner and F2L Celadon with 12 points for 4th, 5th, and 6th.
Can I just say that's a really clean logo from Safari Wild? I approve. Also, bad tech cards. Pretty sure that's that word on there is banned in certain Twitch chats, so we will not be saying that card out loud. Anyways, moving on. We had bad tech cards versus EU Everyone's a Winner for the first match to discuss. Faye, Elfie, and BMK all took wins for their team. Lasagna falling 3-2 to Elfie. Good on her. I hear she brought a shaman that I originally thought was Rito, but she actually had a copy or 2 copies of Ice Fishing included. So it wasn't full Reno. Outside of that, QB and Faye taking it 3-1. Notice the ban. BMK also going 3-1 against Maxidana. Notice the ban again. Adrian took it 3-2 against Engine. This was a super weird matchup. Adrian had a slower warrior deck, I believe, against Engine's odd Raza Priest. It was super weird. And I saw
a clown
the replay.
fiesta.
I think it reached the turn timer. It was very close to reaching the turn timer. It was just absolute clown fiesta, as you said, rotted. But notice once again, Adrian banned Warlock, he won. The only exception was Destruct versus Mr. Luke 98, where Destruct banned the Warlock, Luke didn't, but Luke couldn't ban the Warlock because there was no Warlock on Destruct's side. And with that, bad tech cards took it.
That being said, the EU variant of Everyone's a Winner, I mean, Lasagna, Maxidana, and Mr. Luke, QB. I'm not as familiar with Adrian, but I would not sleep on those 4 players. They are very, very good.
It's going to be quite the lineup throughout the season. I believe they've got such ladder powerhouses that you would expect it all goes back to the average for them. they're gonna pick up some wins.
Yeah, absolutely. This Everyone's a Winner variant is very strong. I still think they're one of the favorites in the series, even though there's only 6 and there's still a long season ahead. Definitely look out for them. And I don't expect them to be losing much more. Moving on, we have one more match discussed in the EU Wild Series. Rod, you want to take this?
Absolutely. So this one was also quite close. Safari Wild versus A Little Agony. I get it. Safari Wild won 14-12. And it was on the back of 3 very close matches and then 2 sweeps. So in this case, you see in each side, 60% did ban the Warlock, far more Druid brought by Safari Wild. On the Little Agony side, almost everyone brought Warrior. And just can I put a pin right there for a second? Would we agree that in a conquest atmosphere right now, given what we know about Wild, unless you're like doing like a hard control strat, Pirate Warrior is probably a fairly safe choice, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Given the number of brings it had last week, and even this week so far, it alludes to it being a fairly common and popular bring.
Yeah.
I also wanted to be known that
Go ahead.
Romanu did bring Hand Buff Warrior. He stuck to his guns.
And I mean, this lineup sort of speaks to the early meta and people sort of trying the stuff out that had been popular. A lot of Druid, a lot of Hunter, more Mage than I would expect, but people were looking for any advantage over Warlock, I guess. But I mean, they just end up banning it anyway, in a lot of cases. Very close again. I think we're going to see a lot of this throughout the season, though. Just a lot of people who haven't had a chance to play in THL before are now stepping up in the EU Wild Series. And over the course of the next few weeks, we're going to really see how these teams start to shake out. I mean, I know a lot about these individual players. I'm friends with them in Europe. I've faced them before. I don't know about the teams as a whole in terms of composition. So we're just going to have to see how it all gels together. And as it goes, it looks like these guys are already off to a decent start. Even in the loss, Little Agony played well.
Yeah, for sure. And like we mentioned before, this was very close. So really, we're excited to see how the Wild Series shapes up because a lot of these matches can go either way. And these guys are going to be playing again, too. Each team plays each other twice in the season. and there's still more opportunities for them to play in the playoffs as well. So these guys will be getting used to each other pretty quickly. With that said, that wraps up all our match recaps. So we're going to return to the home screen. And we have a small segment left. We're going to discuss teams and players to watch, where each one of us discusses a team or player that we feel has been maybe sleeping under the radar or is known by a lot of people, but they're really just making a lot of noise in their series and deserve a shout out. Seth, do you want to start? You have
I would
Brown
love to.
Conference.
All right, so I play in Brown Conference, and I'm already pretty familiar with all these players. But if I really had to pick one, we're obviously not going everyone's a winner. No one's sleeping on them. But I would have to give it to Tom Carter on Pod Merchants. He did start out 0-1, but in his first season of THL, he came out with a huge, I believe it was 8-3. But he maybe he hasn't been around as long as some of these other names, but he is certainly one of the most explosive players I've seen, because he came out of nowhere and put up one of the best performances I think I've ever seen. So I would definitely look out for him. And Sick Lad, I'm not really sure how much Conquest experience he has, but he did come out with a 1-0 this week. He gave up his beloved Reno lock in favor of Seeds, and it paid off. So I would keep an eye on them. But one more thing, if you're going to watch out for a team, I have heard No Fin 2. I've heard they're very good. I would keep an eye on them.
I don't know. Their captain throws a lot. From
Oh,
what I
he's
hear.
a smooth brain, but you can still be carried by the other 4 teammates.
I see.
We've got 3 regular top 10 players. One of them's camping on 10. Rice Bowl, or Tiger Eyes
no.
camping on 1. Rice Bowl
Oh.
plays just the highest level of Hearthstone, because you actually play standard, the
Yes,
not
the actual
copium,
competitive.
wild copium competitive
Yeah,
2-head read. He plays the real format too.
the good stuff. Rodden, what do you think of Green? Rodden?
I'm sorry. Can you?
Oh,
I
no,
thought
think you're on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're good.
Oh,
What do you
thank
think
God.
of Green?
I thought I had unmuted myself, and then I just apparently fat fingered it because I'm a big old. In terms of Green, I want to look actually, Captain, at a couple of the players that we're going to be facing. I think that it's very interesting to see players like Nice Jewel Zhao and Geranium Battle, who are very well known for their standard pedigree, stepping into Wild and already having some decent results. Nice Jewel Zhao 1-0, Geranium 0-1. That being said, I really like to see people. I don't want to say stepping out of their comfort zone, because cards are cards, but I'm really, really excited to see over the course of the season how these two play it out, because I really I think they have the potential to do quite well.
I'm gonna back up, especially Nice Jewish Owl. I have played him in a couple of Wild tournaments, and he obliterated me. He may not main Wild, but he is not someone you sleep on.
Well, that's exactly it. Like, looking at our side of F2L, Neji is a multi-time THL Wild champion, but he's more well known for his time in like the top 100 standard ladder, going to various Masters tours. He's a standard guy, but because he's such a good player at cards and puts a lot of thought and effort into it, he can clean up in Wild as well. I really hope for the same for these two gentlemen from Owl.
Yeah. Well, you got the Happy Ghoul's blessing. And finally, EU. I want to
It's playtime.
shout out a player that not a lot of people have really discussed, but I've seen high up on ladder there pretty often. King's Bounty already won this week, won last week as well. I believe they sealed it for their team last week too, to give Safari Wild their first win in the first week of the Wilds in EU. And they seem like a player that's very strong in Conquest, someone that is up and coming that not a lot of people know, but will know very soon. And I highly recommend preparing well if you have to face them, because they're not going to go easy on you, and they're going to rack up a lot of points.
King's Bounty took down Slod first week of EUTHL, which is nothing to scoff at. That's impressive.
Well, Slod does have a bit of a weaker collection from what I've told.
Okay.
But it was
Regardless.
it was the fact that he won the second week as well that got me to have my eyes on him. So definitely don't sleep on him. We'll be discussing other players in following shows as well. So if you weren't mentioned here, don't worry. Just win a few games. We'll catch your eye and we'll mention you. So, any final thoughts, guys?
Oh boy. I don't know, buddy. I know we were all hopeful for adjustments that would really revitalize the format. I think the adjustments were quite good, except if you're 6J, in which case they're trash. That
Oh,
being,
6J.
yeah, I know.
My
That
heart hurts for 6J.
I know. His hopes flowed away like so many spells to 3 mana. I don't know. I think we have to wait and see. I know that there are a lot of very strong reactions out there right now, especially among people who are just like grinding like top wild ladder. But I think we just need to either give it time for counters to emerge or for us to be proven right, and then it to be on the developers again to do something about the Demon Seed.
Yeah. It's going to be tough to see how the meta develops, but I don't expect too much of a change just yet. We'll see how it goes. Obviously, we'll have to give it another week or two. Hopefully, we get a response from Blizzard soon. But otherwise, we're going to be suffering for a little while.
A
One
little
more thing I want
agony
to
goes a
mention.
long way.
Yes, truly. One more thing I want to mention is we have a wild match set up on Saturday on Schoolstone. It's going to be Tom Carter versus the aforementioned 6J at 2 p.m. Eastern. Okay. So
Don't miss that match. That will
if
be a
you
very
ever,
good match.
It will be. But if you ever want to have your match streamed, just hit up one of us or Lotus Knight, the op for this show, and we'll get a time slot for you. We'll set you up, and you get to be able to play on the stream. It's a lot of fun. There's no pressure, really. You don't have to worry about it at all. We still have the delay, so people are going to be watching, but they're not going to be judging you in real time. And if you win, you get to say whatever you want on stream. It's a lot of fun. Give it a try. Would recommend. Seth, anything you want to say? Final words?
Wild Copium competitive two-head read.
Oh no. You
Oh
had to do
no.
it.
He's gone full meme.
Oh
You hate to see it.
no.
That one was for Rice Bowl.
All right. Shout out Rice Bowl for that. Well, thanks again, everyone, for stopping by. We're still working out on whether we're going to do this every week or every other week. So leave some feedback in the server or just DM one of us and let us know how often you want to see this show. And until then, we'll see you next time. Thanks again.
See you guys.
Take care, everybody.